The American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, is one of the most important events in the history of the United States. Its 4 years of combat and chaos killed some 750,000 soldiers, abolished slavery, and shaped the fate of the entire nation. It also gave the world a number of strange secrets and mysteries. Let's take a look at 5 of those mysteries. Most people who are familiar with the Civil War history know that Thomas J. Stonewall Jackson, the famous Confederate Lieutenant General, died a very particular death. His own men accidentally shot him in the Battle of Chancellorsville on May 2, 1863. But what really happened on that fateful night? Although historians generally state that Jackson was shot because of the darkness and confusion on the battlefield, the waters of history have been fairly muddy on this particular subject. Jackson's fame led many people from both sides of the conflict to claim that they were involved in his death, and the conspiracy theories of murder and foul play have surfaced every once in a while. The question was finally answered in 2013 near the 150th anniversary of the great general's death. 2 astronomers painstakingly concluded that the phases of the moon during that night. When Jackson was returning to his troops, the moon was so dim it would have revealed a shadow. When the frightened soldiers were startled by this mysterious soldier-shaped shadow, they instantly opened fire, only to find their horror that they had failed their own commander. When Private Thomas Timberlake of the 2nd Virginia Infantry was walking through a corpse-littered battlefield of Port Royal, he happened to find a photo of a young girl. The problem was that the photo happened to lie exactly between 2 dead soldiers, one of them Confederate and the other Union. Timberlake took the photo with him and eventually found its way to the Museum of Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia. The museum has a fairly good collection of similar mysterious photos that soldiers from both sides of the war have given for safekeeping and never reclaimed, most likely because they died in battle. They depict people that are long dead, and although the museum occasionally manages to track down some of the people in the pictures, some of them, like the unidentified young girl found between the dead soldiers, are never identified. Their picture remains sad, old mystery of the time gone by, never reclaimed or recognized by anyone. On November 9, 1861, a steamer named the USS Keystone State disappeared. What made this strange were the circumstances. The Civil War-era ship was nowhere near the battlefront. The vessel had been assumingly hauling passengers and iron goods from Detroit to Milwaukee on the Great Lakes of Michigan. What's more, the USS Keystone State was one of the largest steamers at the time. Its disappearance was surprising. For over 150 years, the ship's final fate remained a mystery. Finally, in 2013, a veteran shipwreck hunter found the mighty vessel at the bottom of a lake, where it had lain for over years. It was determined that the USS Keystone State had sunk in a nasty storm. But why was it attempting to make a voyage during such a terrible storm? Its finder had a possible explanation. It may be the ship was involved in war after all, and was actually carrying a large amount of military equipment for a special militia forming in Wisconsin. The Battle of Shiloh was one of the bloodiest in the entire Civil War. It was a 2-day struggle that left little time for doctors to tend to the many wounded, and massive amount of wounded soldiers meant that many of them were left just lying on the battlefield for days. As the wounded men lay in agony, a strange thing happened. Some of their wounds started glowing. The eerie scene was clearly visible in the dark, and no one could understand what was happening. However, the strangest part happened when doctors actually started treating the wounded. The soldiers with glowing wounds were actually healing much better than the ones with normal, non-glowing injuries. The phenomenon soon became known as Angel's Glow. Its nature remained a mystery, and many suspected the healing shine was actually divine in origin. Perhaps because of its nature as a conflict where brother fought against brother, the Civil War has left behind quite a few ghost stories. From Gettysburg to Chickamauga, most major Civil War battlefields are notoriously infested with ghosts. But the battle doesn't always need a massive amount of injuries to be haunted. Kolb's Ridge Court was a small housing area in Kolb's Farm near Georgia. On June 22, 1864, the area saw a few small battles that became known as the Battle of Kolb's Farm. According to many, it was less of a large-scale battle and more of a scrimmage, but still, it was more than enough to leave the area with strange phenomena. The area survived the war. New houses were built and new residents eventually moved in. The residents of one new house in particularly have experienced extremely unsettling events, such as a mysterious man in Civil War-era clothing walking in the house, unseen hands tugging their clothing, cold spots, and most frequently, invisible beings playing with their power tools when no one is looking.